welcome to episode number 9 of the LSR Podcast. My name is Matt Brown, joined each and every week by the brightest minds in all of the gambling industry. This week, Adam Candy, Eric Ramsey. Eric Ramsey live from Las Vegas. We are happy to have you here, Mr. Ramsey.
Thanks, boys. Good to be here.
Guess what, guys? They listen to us. Yeah, the Apple guy. Yeah, he listened to us. We are now on iTunes. If you want to subscribe to this podcast, which I know you do, just head over to the iTunes machine and you can find us, Legal Sports Report, LSR Podcast. Hit that subscribe button and then hit the rate and review button and talk about how amazing Eric and I are. And Adam, if they want to give their true opinions of you, there's really nothing we can do about it. If it's going to be in the reviews here. You know, it is what it is.
There's absolutely nothing someone will say in an iTunes review that I haven't heard over Thanksgiving dinner.
There you go. And so there we have it, guys. So fire away. You know, listen, just go right ahead and do what you've got to do. If you want to follow on the Twitter machine, at LSP Report, at Adam Candy. That is with 2 E's, no Y, at Eric_Ramsey. I am at Matt Brown M2. Dustin Gowker may or may not join us for this podcast. We shall see. Guys, that is the big mystery heading in to episode number 9 here. But as always, so many state updates here. I mean, tons and tons and tons. And let's kick things off here, Adam, with what is going on in the great state of Pennsylvania.
We've got action, live things coming in Pennsylvania, and it could be soon. Sports betting could launch on mobile as soon as next week. We anticipate that the first sports betting app will go into live testing. That's per information we have from the Pennsylvania Gaming Control Board. Our best guess is that will be someone from the River Sugar House family probably going first. We know that Sugar House has that technology already ready to go from New Jersey, and they've been kind of chomping at the bit to get this going. And for Pennsylvania, I mean, this is just enormous news to add mobile when they look at what's been going on next door in New Jersey, and the fact that Pennsylvania, despite having about 2.5 more people in Pennsylvania, has been getting lapped in terms of handle and revenue by their neighbors in New Jersey.
Very, very interesting here. Of course, Pennsylvania, one of those states where we were definitely watching whenever this was announced because we didn't know how many people were actually going to get involved there, the steep taxes, the very high cost of licensure. But here we go. Pennsylvania looks like it is a go. Eric, you have a quick update at LSR on Rhode Island and a lawsuit. What's going on with that?
Yeah, so there's actually a legal effort to challenge the legality of Rhode Island sports betting. We heard rumors that this might be coming together over the last few weeks. It was filed in Superior Court in Rhode Island this week in Providence. This originates with a group of GOP sort of political activists affiliated with the GOP that essentially are saying that the lawmakers deprived the voters of their constitutional right to decide sports betting at the ballot box. Like a number of states, the Constitution in Rhode Island empowers voters to have the final say on expansions of gambling. These laws, both the retail betting and mobile betting laws in Rhode Island, were passed without a referendum as sort of a new form of gambling rather than an expansion of gambling. So now it's going to be up to the courts to decide whether or not to decide this issue. It is now in the court system in Rhode Island.
Dustin Gowker joins us on the podcast here. Dustin, give us your thoughts on what's going on there in Rhode Island.
I think it's obviously pretty dumb to try to stop sports betting. Like it's the hay's kind of already in the barn. If you're trying to stop sports betting while every other state in the world is trying to legalize it in parallel, like that seems like a really dumb idea. It's also just indicative of the backwards kind of thinking we're seeing in some states that are not doing this in an optimal manner, not doing mobile, trying to limit how it's going to happen. So I guess it's not surprising that we see efforts like this too. But this is like Rhode Island's going to lose out to all the other states around it eventually if they were to somehow win this court case, which again, we're not lawyers, but who knows? It does seem pretty silly though.
Adam, we have some rapid fire states here. Of course, these are states that we have talked about extensively on the podcast here, but again, just more things in the works here as the weeks go by. Let's start off with Tennessee here.
Boy, it's been an interesting one in Tennessee, but we have finally wound our way to the governor's desk with the betting bill in Tennessee. We've told you about the details over the last couple of weeks. It got a little bit dicey after the House and Senate did not agree to perfectly matching bills. Got bounced back to the House again from the Senate. We know that the debate in the House was a lot more, we'll say, vigorous and interesting than on the Senate side. The biggest thing to know about the Tennessee bill, this is not an industry-friendly bill. We'll put it that way. Official data for the first time is codified in law in this bill. It's required for all in-play bets. There's a ban on all college props, not just on in-state teams, on any college proposition bets for college football, college basketball. An annual licensure fee of $750,000. But I think it's important to note that in Pennsylvania, you're paying $10 million, but you're paying it one time. In Tennessee, you're going to catch up over time to, say over a 10-year period to $7.5 million. And you have to realize Tennessee is a much smaller state and much harder to recoup the investment. So some of the folks we've been talking to have said this is a state that's going to heavily favor DraftKings and FanDuel and companies that have their marketing built in and don't have a huge spend, because you're also looking at a tax rate of 22.5%. So this Tennessee bill, while it gets legal sports betting going online only throughout the state, is certainly not the best that the industry could have seen go through.
Now, Eric, one of the interesting things about Tennessee is it is a state that does not have any casinos.
It does not. It will be the first for that as well. I will go ahead and say what Adam did, and this bill sucks. This is a really ugly sports betting bill. There wasn't really great support for it. This just narrowly passed both chambers. Concurrence only happened by 2 votes. Lots of uncomfortable testimony. The 2 sponsors are both the subject of some public scrutiny and misconduct allegations. This is just I just get a bad feeling about this bill. It is not a good one.
Now, Dustin, we talk extensively about, the formation of these bills, the language in these bills, the way that these things go through. So as we move forward, judging by what Eric has to say and then just kind of reading between the lines with Adam, this is probably not something if someone were to give you a buzz and say, hey, who should we be emulating here? I don't guess you're going to send them the Tennessee stuff.
Yeah, it's not ideal. I mean, we do have at least the open mobile model, which is basically what we have in New Jersey. That's worked out. So, I like that piece of it. But yeah, this is kind of maybe a little bit of a Frankenstein of good and bad things. Like Eric said, some of what the leagues want is in here. No royalties, at least. But I would not say this is the model bill. And in fairness, like every state that we see, there is certainly no model bill that's just getting through. So the leagues will have this to point to as, hey, we're using official data. This is what you guys should be doing. But this is just one state out of many that have contemplated legislation, and certainly a very different model than others.
Adam, we talked about the I states last week. Let's go ahead and update people on where we sit in Indiana and Iowa.
In Indiana and Iowa, the I states get an A because both of their bills are on their way to the governor. Indiana, we have a little more confidence than Iowa. We heard from one of the Senate sponsors of the Indiana bill that he had spoken with the governor. There was no opposition coming, although that bill has not been signed into law yet. In Iowa, it's going to take a little bit longer. They have a rule where any bill that passes toward the tail end of the session, the governor gets 30 days to review that bill. And we have heard some conflicting statements from Governor Reynolds about whether that bill will ultimately be signed. But we have Iowa, Indiana, both ready to potentially go. Both bills have a mobile element to them. Both bills have fairly reasonable tax rates to them. So these are a couple of bills that I think everyone can look forward to if they ultimately make their way into law.
And the fine people of Montana have something to be proud of, right?
The fine people of Montana might have more than one thing to be proud of. I mean, let's start with Glacier National Park, because honestly, they should be proud of that at all times. It's quite a beautiful place. But they also have 2 sports betting bills that are going to make their way to the governor. From what we hear, the bill that operates sports betting via the lottery probably has the better chance of making it through. Of course, both bills could be signed. They don't compete to the point where you couldn't find a way to operate. But at the same time, Montana was not a state that we had at the top of the list at the beginning of this year. And it's starting to look like that they actually might get to the finish line first of anyone.
Eric, this is something that we look forward to. We didn't get an update last week, so certainly looking forward to the update this week. Where do we sit on the number of bills here? Of course, the cheap plug, you can head over to Legal Sports Report, and you can look at the handy-dandy little map that's going on there. But you just tell us, where do we sit?
We have 38 states that considered or are considering bills this year, and I have 152 individual bills on my last report. 152. I think last year was about 65.
My over-under on number of states that are going to pass laws is I was taking victory laps early, and now I'm screwed, I think. I don't know. Go ahead.
We had all this long period of inactivity we've been talking about. We're just, states were struggling for the first part of this year to get bills across the finish line. Now we have, if my math is right, we have a May 5th deadline in Montana, May 8th in Indiana, another May 9th for the second bill in Montana. So over the next week, we should have some decisions on these bills for good.
If I remember my over-under, though, of new states to pass laws to authorize sports betting, I think I had 6.5. So it's not like we're dead in the water if you had the under. We have 4 states that look pretty good, and then you still need to come through with a few more states. So if you have under or over tickets, I would hold on to them.
Well, you are certainly someone people would turn to when it comes to handicapping these things. So where your gut feeling, of course, we understand that you might take a bath in this with all the bets that you took. However, where do you think we land here?
Man, I don't know. I feel like the line is still good. I think 6.5 might be good. Yeah. I might move it up to 7 just because. I mean, we have 4 that look pretty good. I mean, you could lose Iowa. We have a bunch of other states though. New Hampshire, North Carolina, other states hanging out there that might get done. Colorado and Louisiana that we'll talk about in a little bit. So if you put all of that together, like I don't know, I think 7 is probably the number now. Maybe just I would probably put it on a number like that just to. Be a little more cautious. Now I'd raise it a little bit.
We were a bit optimistic last week on Florida, and when we say optimistic, just for the fact that something had kind of sprouted up there. Not so much now, right?
Oh yeah, Florida. We were excited for 2 seconds that looked like something was happening. There was reporting out of Florida this week that a larger gambling bill was dead for this session. Like 99% dead was the quote I saw. Doesn't mean it can't get done. Florida has can call a special section to deal with gaming, but we've kind of seen the song and dance in Florida a lot where people say they have a deal, that they're working on it, and then nothing actually happens. So we're back down to Florida is a pretty big underdog to get sports betting done anytime this year, but doesn't mean it can't happen.
Eric, it's basically our weekly soap opera. I mean, this could be As the World Turns. This could be Guiding Light. This could be that's the end of my soap opera knowledge. What's the other one? One Life to Live, right? In that one? Yeah. Come on, Dustin. You know him. You probably used to watch him. Come on, Dustin.
I watched him with my mom during summer vacation. I'm pretty sure.
What was her soap of choice?
Santa Barbara was the one.
Yeah. Oh, all right. Adam seems like a guy that would know. He can probably rattle off 5 right now.
Like the sands of the hourglass, these are the sports betting days of our lives.
You took my segue. Come on, that's my New York segue. I'm already thinking about that. Way too good, buddy. Way too good.
I'm so very sorry about that.
Young and the Restless.
Young and the Restless.
Young and the Restless.
You even identified the soap. Good job.
Yeah, look at that. I mean,
let me tell you about New York. I know I'm not there this week, but can we talk about New York for a second?
We Passions used to be one, by the way. That was a soap opera. Passions.
That one was absurd, by the way.
Yeah.
That was with like magic and stuff, right? And witches.
Yeah. I mean, this is Boy,
we're dating ourselves here, but
we are. But
like, what the hell is this?
Yeah, sorry, we got a little bit off the rails, but it was. I mean, listen, I didn't. If someone would have given me the over under on how many soap operas I could name, I'd probably give myself 2.5. So I'm really proud of me. I just want everyone to know that I'm really proud of me because I think I named like 5.
That's not something anyone on this podcast has ever doubted.
Yeah. I got like 5 there, I think, or something like that. All right, Eric, let's get back to this. Why we actually came here. Let's talk about New York.
Yeah, I never know how much backstory to give because we do talk about this every week. But New York is working on legalizing mobile betting. We're going to roll out retail betting soon, but we don't have a law authorizing mobile betting yet. There's basically 2 paths to do this year. We had the attempt to get it in the budget. That effort came up short at the beginning of April. Now we have a couple more months to make laws, and lawmakers are going to try to do this through the legislative path. We heard at the Betting on Sports America conference last week, we heard Assemblyman Gary Pretlow kind of run through the changes he wants to make to this bill. Those changes appeared today. Both the Senate version and the Assembly version have been amended. I think we talked about some of these provisions. There's going to be a $12 million license fee in this version. The provisions for racetracks and OTBs were stripped, so it will be only commercial and tribal casinos. And of course, New York is really attached to that 0.2% integrity fee that exists in both versions of the amended bills that are on file. I don't know why New York lawmakers are so tied to this fee, but it persists in this version.
Well, we do have tens of thousands of new listeners each week now that we're on iTunes. So, so can you give people a little background of just where Cuomo sits and kind of his position on sports betting in general?
Yeah, so the Constitution of New York gives voters the power to authorize, just like Rhode Island gives voters the say over expanded gambling. And the same question exists as it does in Rhode Island. Is mobile betting an expansion of gambling or just a new form of what already exists? This has been the battle for the spring between the governor's office and primarily the Senate is the one pushing this effort mostly. Cuomo seems to go back and forth. He was firmly opposed to doing this legislatively at the start of the year. Sounds like he may have softened a little bit, but there's still opposition in the assembly regardless of his stance. So I know Dustin will tell you, as he has for many weeks, that this is still quite an underdog to get through for the year.
This is not not one of the states you're including in your possible over here, huh, Dustin?
No, I mean, it's like I said, like any state, it's got a chance. We're live and kicking, but like if I were to say New York is not a favorite to pass a sports betting bill that allows all online wagering, no, I don't think so.
And if history is any indication, we won't know until probably the last few hours or days of session. New York has a way of dragging these gaming issues out, so it looks like we probably won't really know until late June.
Now, Dustin, this is certainly getting the cart before the horse here, but we've seen the numbers come out of New Jersey. We've seen, even numbers where there's not mobile that, you wouldn't think that the numbers coming out of even Mississippi and some of these other places would be as high as they are. I mean, New York would be instant everything leader. I mean, it would leapfrog Nevada instantly, correct?
Yeah, maybe not like month one, but number one, there's so many people in New York. They're primed for sports betting. It would be a massive market immediately. It would pass New Jersey quickly, Nevada not soon after that. It'd just be just because of the sheer volume. As long as they're doing it right. I mean, there's some question about exactly the mechanics of how this is done. You have to kind of route the sportsbook apps through existing commercial casinos. So there's some weirdness that has to be done, but we have DraftKings, FanDuel, Sugar House, Bet365 are the vendors who are in there in New York already who would be running it through the casinos. So these guys know what they're doing. They have good brands, so it would be big pretty quickly. Yeah.
Adam, Colorado is another state that we're monitoring here, and you have a beautiful little headline up on Legal Sports Report right now. So let's hear your take on Colorado.
I think Adam has left us for greener pastures. So I think we're.
Oh no! Don't you take my Colorado away from me?
I just don't see
you dare. Listen, that Colorado story is one that I have been waiting on for quite a long time, and I'm not even going to give away to the good listeners the headline that is coming if this bill ever passes. But I will say that the state of Colorado has been moving very quickly. We saw a bill that actually Eric broke for us a couple of weeks ago that appeared to send sports betting to the ballot in Colorado. And this thing is already to the floor in the Senate. Now, there are only a couple days left in the session in Colorado, and this thing has been stuck on the floor longer than old gum, and we can't seem to get this thing moving in the last couple of days in Colorado. I will tell you, I've learned a lot about mobile homes and bed bugs in the Centennial State just by having listened to a couple of days of floor session in Colorado. But this would potentially open up mobile sports betting in Colorado. 10% tax rate, pretty reasonable. Of course, getting it passed is just going to be a mechanism for sending it to the ballot, because Colorado has what's known as a TABOR, a taxpayer bill of rights approved by Colorado voters. 25 years ago, this thing came into existence. I don't know, man. Like, you know, T-shirts, scrunchies, and Z Cavaricis also sounded like a good idea 25 years ago, and that's about as well as TABOR's held up over time as well. It's the kind of law that just cripples government. But in any case, the voters will likely get their say in Colorado. You could see the start of Colorado sports betting by 2020 if this were ultimately to be authorized. And right now, for as liberal as we look at Colorado as, with legal marijuana and so on, historically a very conservative state when it comes to gambling. There are only 3 towns tucked away in the Rocky Mountains that have legal gambling, and right now, we're looking at having to ask the voters if they want sports betting throughout the state.
I had a pair of purple jabots.
Wow. Merit St. Francois Gerbeau?
Yeah.
Very well done.
You brought up the Z Cavaricis. I had a pair of purple jabots. How do you like that?
Definitely picture that.
You know, the worst part about this is that this is a podcast. We need this to be a video podcast.
Yeah, I know. I don't know if any of those pictures exist still to this day. I don't know where all the pictures are of all of the horrible fashion choices I made as a child growing up, tight rolling these purple Jabot jeans as well. You know,
was this some sort of like an homage to Vanilla Ice?
I don't know. I mean, he was certainly a dude. You know, I mean, I had the tape. There's no doubt about that.
Nicely done. I'm proud of you.
I don't want this to go past either. I want to make sure that Eric and I were listening to Colorado the day before too, and they were talking about cow flatulence. that was an
really
actual thing we
listened
to.
You know, it sucks waiting for these bills to come up. We've been watching for 2 or 3 days straight now, waiting for these bills. But really, you get some amusement from the other issues being considered. It was dried mammalian penises in West Virginia a few weeks ago. So
you had to get that one in there. Didn't you?
Listen, this is important stuff. The listeners need to know this. Like, this is why you guys listen to these things and they do not, because if not, they have to sit through all these things. Although that might be a selling point for watching these. I don't know. Yeah. It depends on the person, I guess. Different strokes for different folks, right?
So to speak.
All right, Adam, before you get out of here, tell me about my beloved state of Louisiana.
Before we go any farther with the talk of Louisiana, I have to ask, did you read the headline on the story?
I mean, I did.
Huh. I was expecting more reaction.
He was trolling. He was basically just trolling you with the headline.
I mean, I know this guy over here, this Adam Candy, has to make cute headlines for all of these stories or whatever, and then he wants to hearken back to the horrible non-pass interference call against my Saints, and then he puts it in the headline here. You
know what the worst part is? I had to go write 2 different, I had to write 2 different versions of that headline to make sure we had something that looked pretty in a couple of different places. So I worked hard at that. So did the legislators.
Does it delay these stories? I mean, just go ahead and confess here. How many minutes do these stories get delayed getting posted because you are sitting there trying to get cute with these headlines? Honestly.
Minutes? You say minutes as though it's not hours.
I was going to say half an hour at least, right? What's the longest you let a story sit because you could not get a headline that you felt good about?
Oh, I mean, I've definitely edited a story and then I didn't like the headline, so I went and edited a different story and then came back to it later, as long as it wasn't something time sensitive for our legal sports report readers.
Good stuff.
But going back to the state of Louisiana, if you liked the DFS bill that ran this year, you'll love the sports betting bill that has a chance of running in the coming year, because they are pretty much the same, in which legislators are going to throw sports betting to the ballot and do it parish by parish. And after I wrap this up, I'll let you explain to the good people how the parish thing works in Louisiana. But it's the sort of thing where you could have a bit of a geofencing situation throughout the state where You're looking at different parishes that say yes or no to having legal sports betting, and that will be how we go about this on the ballot. It has passed the chamber on its way to another, and Louisiana sports betting could be racing Colorado sports betting to the ballot this fall.
Yeah, and from what I saw, it seems like this almost is one of those situations where they realize they're playing catch up. Obviously, their neighbor there in Mississippi already has it, and so they are certainly they brought that up numerous times I've seen, and certainly articles and opinions have been written saying like, hey, why are we having our people from New Orleans drive over to Biloxi to go place bets and things? So it looks like Louisiana probably will get that done.
And the parishes are sort of like counties, right?
Yes, yeah, that's just they are counties, it's just they're called parishes, so it is what it is. Okay.
Hey, Dustin, do these referendum states count to your total for bills passed this year, Colorado and Louisiana?
If they pass a referendum, I mean, somebody will legalize sports betting if it gets to the parishes. I guess I'd count Colorado too. I think does the referendum have to pass then too? I guess.
I don't know. You're the one making the rules here.
I'm going to say yes, just because I want that.
Where are we going to get our official data to grade these bets?
I know the grading of this is a mess. But that's what you get when you bet at my offshore sportsbook.
BetDustin.com. That's
I'm gonna check that. BetDusty.com. So trolling me.
Right. All right, guys. So let's close things out here talking about some pretty interesting news that came out. FanDuel Sportsbook is going to be going with some in-app streaming of some sports contests, so you'll be able to bet right alongside of a sport that is going on. Now, they are going to start with some of the smaller stuff. You're going to see tennis. You're going to see like German soccer. You're going to, things like that. Of course, you're not going to see NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, things like that, at least for the time being. Of course, that will be something that happens down the line. It's not an if, it's just a when. But very interesting stuff here, Eric. I mean, this is what we all figured was the future, and now the future is kind of happening now.
Yeah, this is the first little step. It's hard for maybe some of us American sports fans to get too excited about tennis and soccer, but this is, I think we all know this is where this is going in the States. If we look at other markets abroad and just the general timbre of technology these days, this is where it's going. We think about, tennis is very well suited to this, actually, and golf comes up a lot when we talk about in-play betting. Golf also perfectly suited to this. If you give me this for golf, I will move wherever you want for sports betting. And you mentioned no NFL, but there's a separate deal with Yahoo that's going to be incorporating some NFL broadcasts in their fantasy platform as well. So lots of sports streaming news from the gaming operators this week.
Yeah, I mean, Dustin, the reason I say that we're probably not going to have that, like the sports betting stuff at least with FanDuel and DraftKings and the gambling companies right off the bat, is just with those. We know where these leagues make their money. It is off of these broadcast rights. And of course, they already had a deal with Yahoo, so I'm sure it was a lot easier to facilitate getting that done. But I mean, these are multi-billion-dollar contracts that they're signing with these networks and things like that. So it's going to be pretty tough, at least in the near future, to see any of the actual major sports kind of end up in one of these apps where you can bet alongside it.
Yeah, and agree. It was cool to say, oh, FanDuel has this functionality now. And you can do it. You can see some tennis, some soccer. I'd be into definitely some cricket. I want to see some cricket streaming. Darts too. I would watch the crap out of darts on FanDuel or wherever. But yeah, this is a really baby step. It's kind of hard to get super excited about just these lower sports. The end game here is to get the major U.S. sports somehow streaming in apps. Like if somebody cracks that nut and somehow has the relationships with the leagues or TV or networks or what have you to get this done, then we're really talking something. Because if you have NFL games, NBA games in your app and you can live bet it alongside it, that would be crazy. That would be you would destroy the rest of the market.
Now, I'm certainly spitballing here whenever I say this, but Eric, it seems to me if that were to ever happen, it would almost be where one of these sports books would have to partner up with one of the broadcasters that's already got it. So like an ESPN or a CBS or an NBC or whatever it might be, where they would allow for something like that to happen. Now, of course, there'd probably be hoops that would have to be jumped through with the leagues as well. But we mentioned, when you're ESPN, you're paying multiple billions of dollars to these leagues to broadcast their games. You're not going to just be giving those things away. So it seems like there would have to be some sort of crazy deal struck that also involved the leagues as well, which, once you get all these multiple parties involved, it's kind of hard to get everybody to get on the same page.
Yeah, I think that's probably the most direct path, a partnership like that. Don't forget, it may also work in the other direction. We may end up finding a broadcaster with streaming rights that decides to dabble in sports betting instead of the other way around. That may be a little further down the road. The leagues may be still a little resistant to adopting sports betting to this extent. But yeah, it gives you a sense of where it's going. Matt, I wonder what you think is a bigger deal, NFL streaming in a fantasy platform or soccer streaming in a betting platform?
I probably, to be honest with you, probably the smaller sports in a betting platform, because I just think that people are so conditioned to watching football on their television or at a bar, or even like on their laptop if they've done the whole cord cutting thing or something like that. I don't know how many people are going to be watching their NFL games on their 6-inch screen on the mobile. I don't know. Have you ever done that? I've only done that out of necessity, where I was at a place where there was no other option. So I've had to watch a game on a phone before, but I would certainly not choose to do so.
Yeah, same thing. And remember last year, I think DraftKings started streaming some, I think it was Euro League games maybe in the app. I checked out some of those. Yeah, same sentiment. I think it's nice to sweat your DFS lineups while you're watching a game, but it sort of feels, now that sports betting is here, that sort of feels a little 2017 to me.
Yeah. Dustin, what is your consumption habits? Can you see yourself watching an NFL game on your phone?
I can. I use the MLB TV app all the time just to watch games, and I'm not want to devote sit down and watch in front of the TV. So I don't know what percentage of Phillies games I sit and watch on my phone, but I'll have it on. I'll throw on an inning once in a while, and I'll have it on. So maybe I'm the exception, and I'm okay with it. NFL not as good to watch, but I think MLB's pretty good on a phone. So it's you could see it all. So but yeah, I see that. I see it as a real thing. Maybe with in conjunction with you have the live odds right underneath it. It starts getting really small. But at the same time, if you're using it as a second screen experience, you want to watch other things at the same time. You want to watch the main game you have on your main TV, and you're I'm live betting this thing. I see that as a compelling product.
Yeah, from a betting standpoint, for sure. I think from a fantasy point where we are right now, I don't know. It doesn't really move the needle for me. I think we get to the point where this, when this is really firing on all cylinders, it's the fact that you've got the betting app on your phone, and then it sends you a push notification and says, this game is tied with 3 minutes left in the game. Tune in now and bet live or something. And stuff like that is where I think that this is really, really, really going to get wacky and really explode here, whenever they're basically singling out these micro events that are happening within games and getting you the call to action to go within the app, bet it, and watch it live and things like that. It's bottom of the ninth, the game's tied, whatever, watch it now and bet on it. Like things like that, I think, is where this really just absolutely explodes.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's more. This is such a baby step in early days of it. Which is what we say about everything in the sports betting market in the U.S. We had Nevada for mobile for a while, but that was just a kind of a muted version of what mobile could be. Now we have New Jersey out, and it's exciting to see the product, and it's already way better than what we see in Nevada generally. And then we're just going to see. As there's more states and more opportunity for everything, we're just going to see more innovation. This is not going to be the end of it by any stretch of the imagination.
We hit it on the top of the show here, Dustin, but just to circle back here as people continue listening, by the time they listen to this podcast next week, will they be able to bet on their phone in Pennsylvania?
Barring unforeseen circumstances, that is true. You will be able to sign up at least one sportsbook, I believe, sportsbook app in Pennsylvania, yes.
Cheap plug. Obviously, head to our sites if that is the case, because we are going to have the very best deals that are going on out there. And of course, there's horse racing that is going on this week as well at the Kentucky Derby. So you can go to legalsportsreport.com/TVG and see all the stuff that's going on there. 31 states, I think it is, that you can actually bet on horse racing on your phone or on the computer. So if you did not know that, well, now you know.
Yeah, it's shocking to me how many people don't know you can bet legally on horse racing. I mean, that's just kind of the problem with marketing on horse racing. But yeah, you can get down on the Kentucky Derby on apps in a lot of states.
Yeah, absolute free money as well there. So, yep. legalsportsreport.com/TVG, certainly take advantage of that. All right, guys, for Eric, for Dustin, I am Matt. Again, we're on iTunes. We're on Spotify. We're on all of the places that you do this. Please follow us on the Twitter machine as well, at Dustin Gowker, at Eric_Ramsey, at Matt Brown M2. We'll see you guys next week.